So the CBC recently was under a lot of scrutiny because of its coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. The way in which they covered things, especially things that have now been disproven, at least by multiple news sources and by multiple governments, has left a lot of people wondering why it is that they still will not back down from some stances. So back a few days ago, there was an airstrike against a hospital in Gaza. Initially, there were reports saying it was from the Israel Defense Force, IDF. It was later found out that it wasn't confirmed whether the IDF launched that attack or not. But still, the CBC put forward that headline that it was the IDF. And even days later, they doubled down on it. So I'm going to play the clip of the CBC president, Catherine Tait, who was brought before the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage today to talk about the newsroom's long-standing practice of some of its practices, but also why it's choosing not to back down on it. So I'm going to play this clip. Give me a sec here. Of course, it takes forever to load.
This tape. You mentioned.
Oops.
This holiday,
and there's an
a
ad.
City girl
There's two ads. There's two ads. I just don't. And they're the same ad. Why are they the same ad? I don't get it. This is brutal. Why are they the same ad? I'll never understand it. Anyways, I gotta sit through and listen to this. This is bullshit. Okay, here we go.
In your opening comments that public trust was the most important. So I want to speak to this motion. On October 17th, the CBC published a false headline based on dangerous disinformation that incorrectly stated that Israel was responsible for the explosion at the hospital in Gaza that resulted in the deaths of innocent civilians. And if
Melissa Lantsman, for those that don't know, she's a conservative MP.
you don't have it, I have it right here. That is the headline. It says hundreds killed in Israeli airstrike on Gaza City Hospital, Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza says. And that was since changed, if you don't have this, to Palestinians say hundreds killed in Israeli airstrike on hospital. Israel blames Islamic Jihad. This still lives on the CBC website. So this headline, it's still there. It remains on the website. And I would hope that you would agree with me that in fact the Palestinian Health Authority is controlled by Hamas. I think that is a fact. The Prime Minister, the Minister of National Defense, the United States, the British.
Okay, sorry. Before, I just want to confirm that because I really don't like when people get stuff like this wrong. It just eats at me. So let's just see. Palestinian Health Authority. Controlled, I mean, is it controlled by Hamas? Hamas controls the Gaza Health Ministry. One of the departments under Hamas's purview is the Gaza branch of the Ministry of Health, with responsibility for disseminating data on Palestinian deaths in Gaza. Okay, now that's from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Just want to make sure that's right. You look down, Ministry of Health in Palestine is a government agency in the state of Palestine. The ministry is controlled by the Palestinian Authority, in the West Bank. After Hamas's takeover of Gaza in 2007, Hamas governments have appointed alternate health ministers for the Gaza Strip. Okay, so yes, Hamas has taken over the Gaza Strip and now controls the... Okay, so we're good there. Sorry, everyone.
British and French governments all have definitively said that the attack did not come from Israel. So why won't the CBC?
If I may bring the members' attention to the facts and correct the record. CBC first reported on the terrifically horrific attack or bomb in the hospital in the Gaza Strip based on a...
She did say terrifically horrific. I'll give, you know what? I try not to judge people based on their, slip-ups because I slip up all the time. She did say terrifically horrific. Come on, Catherine Tait, you gotta be better than that. You're on the stand. You're the CEO. Okay, we'll get back to it.
Associated Press report that is a trusted source of news for us. You'll notice if you go to cbc.ca or radiocanada.ca, we often use news feeds from other trusted, reputable news organizations. And we sourced and we cited the source of that information, as Madam Landsman has just pointed out. 90 minutes later, when we received the corrected information, we also updated the site. I just would like to say, we stand behind our journalism. In conflicts and in war, news comes at a very fast rate, and people are claiming on both sides of the story. Our journalists on the ground and in our newsrooms are obliged to measure and take account.
I appreciate that's an Associated Press article, and your mandate is to, you are responsible to Canadians. It's $1.4 billion of taxpayer money. But you said that that you stand by the statement. Palestinians say hundreds killed in Israeli airstrike on Israel hospital. Israel blames Islamic Jihad. That still exists. It is a headline that has been debunked by governments across the world, including even our own Prime Minister, albeit 7 days late. So I want to know if you'll apologize to Jewish Canadians. I want to know if you'll apologize to Canadians. And I want to know when we can expect a retraction from CBC.
Mr. President, I will, or Mr. Chair, Monsieur le Président, I will not apologize because the journalism is among the finest in the world. Our journalists operate in an independent fashion, independent of management, independent of the board of directors, and independent of government and political influence.
Okay, I strongly don't believe that. There's a lot there. So let's get the actual article that they're referencing, because I think that's really that's really important. Hundreds killed. I love doing this stuff because it fascinates me to the core. Okay, so this is the headline. It says, oh, these ads. Palestinians say hundreds. You know what? Let me get rid of this ad. Palestinians say hundreds killed in Israeli airstrike on hospital. Israel blames Islamic Jihad. The latest. Hundreds killed reported killed in airstrike on Gaza City hospital. Israel denies involvement. So this is, I guess they must have updated it. Israel denies involvement in hospital blast, says rocket was fired by Islamic Jihad. A top Israeli official says aid deal depends on guarantees that Hamas will not cease deliveries. The number of people killed in Gaza reaches 3,000, Palestinian Health Ministry says. Okay, so Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry. Now, I wonder if they've changed that since what Melissa Landsman mentioned. So, because she clearly mentioned that their health ministry was run by Hamas, and it must have been that the article did not mention that. So, interesting that that's now updated. The ministry in Gaza says about 500 people were killed. Okay, so let's see. Palestinians say hundreds killed in Israeli airstrike on hospital. Israel blames Islamic Jihad. Let's see. Actually, let's just take a look. See. Israeli airstrike. Hospital. Gaza airstrike. Israel. Let's see. Yeah, from what I'm seeing, again, what I'm seeing, this is literally a Google search that took two seconds. Hospital strike kills hundreds. Okay, this is from Reuters, and it says that Gaza's health ministry spokesman says an Israeli airstrike on Tuesday killed hundreds of people at a hospital in the Palestinian enclave, but Israel said a Palestinian barrage had caused the blast. Okay, the death toll. So this is what Catherine Tate is saying. Reuters cited this. The death toll was by far the largest. A massacre, the health minister, and then Prime Minister Netanyahu says barbaric terrorists in Gaza had attacked the hospital, not Israel military. Okay, so Catherine Tate is right in citing the Associated Press. Now, government of Great Britain, let's see, Israel hospital airstrike, Gaza. See what they say. UK intelligence services have concluded that the deadly blast at Al Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza was caused by a rocket fired by a Palestinian militant group rather than by an Israeli airstrike, Rishi Sunak has told MPs. Interesting. Okay. Government of Canada. Now, and then they said, okay, so this is interesting. This is from the CBC just days later. High degree of confidence Israel didn't strike hospital in Gaza, says Canada's defense minister. Ottawa has a high degree of confidence that Israel did not strike the Al Ali hospital in Gaza on Tuesday after an independent review by the Canadian military, Defense Minister Bill Blair says. Interesting. Canada, independent review? Canada believes the more likely scenario is that the strike was caused by an errant rocket fired from the Gaza Strip, Blair's statement says. Okay, so Canada is even saying this. It's hard to know who's telling the truth here, because it is so confusing. I'd like to see Canada's independent report, if we can actually find that. Let's try to find that. Canada independent. Is it review? Bill Blair, Al Ali Hospital. Ottawa has a high degree of confidence. Okay, that's the same article. Where is it on the government's website? Oh, it's a statement here. Statement from the Minister of National Defense. Canada is deeply saddened by the loss. Independent review. Analysis conducted independently by the Canadian Forces Intelligence Command indicates with a high degree of confidence that Israel did not strike the hospital on October 17th, 2023. The more likely scenario is that the strike was caused by an errant rocket fired from Gaza. We will continue to provide updates as new information. Okay, so this is where precisely the concern comes. The CBC is using information from the Associated Press. Hospital. Sorry, guys. I just really need to know this because this is one of those things I just need to know. Associated Press. Okay, so these are articles from October 17th. The Associated Press. A misinformation article. Okay. This is about misinformation. Okay, I'm not seeing anything here when it comes to the bombing. I'm just going to check I don't see anything here when it comes to bombing. Okay, so anyways, long story short, clearly what the Conservative MP, Melissa Lantsman, was saying is in fact that the CBC is not using accurate information when reporting things when it comes to the situation in Gaza right now. Now, what does that mean? So I think what Melissa Lantsman is getting at is the CBC is reporting information that is misleading to Canadians. It is not relying on Government of Canada reviews in this case, the Government of Great Britain's intelligence gathering, and may further very well stoke the flames of anti-Semitism if we take it to that extent. Again, who knows if that is in fact, if that could actually happen. But the fact remains that that is what Melissa Lantsman is getting at with Catherine Tait. I'm just going to let the end of this part play because there's something really interesting I want to share. I'm just going to rewind it a little bit.
Monsieur le Président, I will not apologize because the journalism is among the finest in the world. Our journalists operate in an independent fashion, independent of management, independent of the board of directors, and independent of government and political influence. They are guided by the journalistic standards and practices, and I invite any member and any Canadian to refer to these practices on our website. They are transparent and they are public.
Okay, so I totally disagree with Catherine Tait's assessment that they are independent and free of government, whatever she said. And here's what I'm going to do and showcase to everybody why I believe this is not the case. This is the easiest thing any Canadian can do, and I encourage Canadians to do this. Here in Canada, for those that aren't from Canada, we had the largest protest ever in our history, the Freedom Convoy in 2022. Jeez, time flies. And the coverage by the media of the Freedom Convoy here in Canada, I couldn't it's so incredible to believe that they were so one-sided. The topic was so divisive for Canadians. There's so many Canadians that were for them. There were many that were against them. It was very divided. It divided Canadians. Many people saw them as standing up for our rights. To paint the background for those that are less aware, Canada had very strong restrictions when it came to COVID-19 during the pandemic. We had lockdowns, we had regional lockdowns, we had vaccine mandates, we had, we had very long lockdowns because, according to the government, we didn't get vaccines fast enough. We didn't have respirators. We didn't have hospital capacity, which is true. We actually don't have proper ICU capacity here in Ontario in particular, and I'm sure it's across the country. Our ICU beds are very low compared to the United States and compared to other countries, or other similar countries. So Canada's ability to service those that had serious and severe respiratory illness as a result of COVID-19 and the complications meant that they just needed to lock us down. Whether or not lockdowns actually helped with lower ICU numbers as a result of COVID, I'd love to see that study done to adequately show that lockdowns are the most effective public health measure to reduce the number of people ending up in ICU beds. I don't know that to be true, and I cannot claim that, but yet the government did that across Canada. We had travel restrictions. We had all types of restrictions. Even after you got the vaccine, there were still restrictions. You had to wear masks everywhere. And then there were job requirements. You had to get the vaccine to work with the government, to do business with the government, to travel into Canada. Basically all Canadians, even if you didn't want to get the vaccine for that period of time, you had no choice, really. If you did any business with government or worked in government, you had to get the vaccine. And this affected truckers who were traveling between borders, United States, Mexico, etc. Of course, the United States had very strict regulations for entering the country. But anyhow, all that said, the truckers to many Canadians represented the frustration that Canadians were having with the vaccine mandates and the COVID lockdowns. We had no idea if the government was going to lift any of those restrictions. But interestingly enough, magically by some standards, right after the Freedom Convoy's protests in February, many restrictions began lifting. And to my knowledge, I think just a few weeks after, most all restrictions were lifted, and they haven't come back yet. Fingers crossed. But anyways, take that very divisive topic, and to show you that it's divisive, let me just show you this CTV poll, Freedom Convoy support. I remember seeing this, and it was really good. Take your kid. What's your favorite? I don't know. Why do they have these polls on like take your kid to work day and stuff? Let me see if I can get it for you. Political support of trucker protests seen as a negative. Let's see. Oh yeah, here it is. This is really interesting. People don't talk about this, but they should. Of course, it's not available. Where is it? I think it's out of CTV Ottawa. Do you think there'll be a protest? Man, what happened? CTV had this massive protest poll. Let's see. Okay, CTV News, a new poll found that 2 in 3 Canadians said the trucker convoy protests were ineffective. I don't know. There's more to that. I think they were actually quite effective. I think a lot of people would say so as well. Maybe I'm completely wrong on that. Of course, CP24, again, media, right? 2/3 of Canadians oppose trucker convoy protest, poll suggests. I don't necessarily believe that. 4 in 10 say that they're strongly consider the demonstration selfish. But almost 30% of Canadians surveyed by Leger disagreed with the characterization that the demonstration against COVID measures that has seen hundreds of large trucks create gridlock and incessant noise. 44% of those polls said they sympathize with the frustrations being voiced by the protesters. Okay, almost 2/3. I don't believe that almost 2/3 of Canadians oppose the protests. I really don't. I do think that it was far more divided than that. But then again, almost 2/3 could be anywhere from 59% to, 65%, right? Like it could be anything. So anyways, all this said, that the survey found that 65% thought the trucker convoy was a small minority of Canadians who are thinking only about themselves and not the thousands of Canadians who are suffering through delayed surgeries and postponed treatments because of the growing pandemic. However, 44% of those polled agreed with the statement, "I am vaccinated against COVID, but I do sympathize with the concerns and frustrations voiced by the people involved in the trucker protest." So that can shed some light. I think these numbers might be a little bit exaggerated. I really do think it's 50-50. I think people were really divided on it. For the amount of people I met who were against it, I actually met more people who were for it. And that's just me in my own circle. But what do I know? Anyways, if you go to the CBC's website, again, we can all agree, divisive topic, you sit on one side or the other. Catherine Tait said that the CBC is free of government influence. Okay, let's take a look, see. So if you literally just Google Freedom Convoy on the CBC's website, all you're going to find are negative article after negative article. Protesters weren't attracted to the convoy by protest. Protesters, Freedom Convoy made it near impossible to live. Officer describes hostile crowd in Lich Barber trial. Trial begins for Farfadas protest group leader. I don't know about that. Crown to call Ottawa residents in convoy trial. Police directed convoy protesters downtown. Officer tells trial. Resident tells trial he felt threatened by convoy participants. Lich Barber trial to restart. These are the organizers, by the way, of the Freedom Convoy. To restart with ruling on resident testimony. More about that. Protesters urinated, defecated on church property. Pat King to face jury in Ottawa after venue changed tonight. Oh, sorry, that's not it. Freedom Convoy organizers to face trial. Defense shows peaceful side of Freedom Convoy. Wow, that's new. I didn't see that before. That's the only positive one. The latest of the trial. These are all about the trial. Criminal trial for key organizers of Freedom Convoy in Ottawa begins. Convoy lawyer said self-styled Freedom Convoy, new police plans at all times. What are the chances of Freedom Convoy 2.0? Crypto donations for Freedom Convoy evading seizure by authorities. I didn't even get into the fact that the government took down like their GoFundMe page and stuff and found out who the donors were and went into their bank accounts and froze their bank accounts. Yeah, that actually happened in this country. Who stood up for the Freedom Convoy, kind of used in like a pejorative term. Residents abandoned to a violent occupation during Freedom Convoy. They were overwhelmed. Mendocino on police during self-described Freedom Convoy. Follow the money. Basically, as you can see, literally everything when it comes to the Freedom Convoy is exceptionally negative. Exceptionally negative. There's not one article here that's at least attempts to be balanced and free of government influence, in my opinion. Now, if I go back to what Catherine Tait said, no, did I lose it? I lost it. Okay, no worries. I'll find it. So if you go back to what Catherine Tait said, she said, if this thing gives me 2 more ads, I'm going to scream. No!
Say bye to Spud. Saputo cheese fries change everything.
Why? Why? I don't get it. Why are they doing this? 2 ads to watch the CBC's 3-minute clip. 3 minutes. That's it. 3-minute clip. I gotta watch 2 ads.
Cherokee 4xe plug-in hybrid electric SUVs.
You're buying a plug-in hybrid SUV. Like, what's going on?
Monsieur le Président,
okay.
I will not apologize because the journalism is among the finest in the world. Our journalists operate in an independent fashion, independent of management, independent of the board of directors, and independent of government and political influence. They are guided by the journalistic standards and practices, and I invite any member and any Canadian to refer.
Okay, it's clear that your CBC people are not free of government influence because not a single article was written on the CBC's website about the frustrations of the Freedom Convoy members, why people were joining the movement, why they felt some type of affinity towards the movement to literally leave their jobs in the dead of winter in Canada, travel hundreds of kilometers, thousands of kilometers to the nation's capital to protest. Now, I am not justifying some of the actions of some of the protesters, you know. Of course, it was technically illegal. If you look at it, it was illegal. Like, let's not, mince words. It was illegal. But as the government, you have to try to understand why people are doing this. Why? What is happening inside government to force people to do this? And as even the CP24 and other major news media showed, 2/3 said it was, whatever, selfish. But 44% of Canadians said that they sympathized with those at the protest. So it's not like this 90-10, as Trudeau put it, this fringe minority of people. Many Canadians supported the Freedom Convoy. They supported their stance. They sympathized with them. And the CBC did not write one single article, did not publish one single article in favor, not even in favor, trying to understand why Canadians are part of the Freedom Convoy. And that's the part that really, really gets me. And when I hear that the CBC is free of government influence, it's not. The government had a coordinated effort to shut down the Freedom Convoy, and not one single article by on the CBC's website by Catherine Tate's team was published to try to explore the nuance of the Freedom Convoy. Not one single thing. So let's find out more about the journalistic standards and practices by the CBC. This is also interesting. Okay, so it's called JSP in the journalism world. When you go down to the CBC's journalistic standards and practices, I was trying to do this earlier today and I couldn't find anything. What you'll find is it doesn't talk about taking, a stance or being biased. Okay, so the Freedom Convoy, and I'm going to stick to that example, was a civil disturbance. So if you look at civil disturbance, it says protests and demonstrations and the right to conduct them are part of a democratic process. In covering these events, the information we provide is as accurate and as timely as possible under the circumstances. In such a fluid situation, there is a commitment on our part to be as open about what we know and how we know it. We will sometimes receive conflicting information from credible sources. We may choose to report this, right? So that we may is very important because it's basically saying we may or may not. Making clear the circumstances of the situation and citing the sources while we work to reconcile the information in light of reality on the ground. The information we provide helps audience understand a fluid and chaotic situation so that it can assess the impact and potential danger. This doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't tell me anything about the CBC being free of government influence, especially when it comes to riots and demonstrations, which in fact is perhaps one of the most important areas where you need to be free of government influence, right? You have to be free of that stuff because otherwise, the riots and demonstrations will be undermined by your biased coverage. Now, can you imagine someone takes time out their day, they're really upset with the government stance on whatever, and there's nothing in the CBC's journalistic standards and practices that openly says that their goal is to try to understand the protest. There's nothing here that says that. In fact, it says if reporters on one side of a confrontation cannot provide an overview, we ensure the audience receives the broader context in the course of our coverage. That's not true. That is not true at all. But hang on. Let me just read that again. If reporters on one side of a confrontation cannot provide an overview, that's interesting. Why would they not be able to provide an overview? We ensure the audience receives a broader context in the course of our coverage. That last part isn't true. They do not ensure the audience receives a broader context in the course of coverage. In fact, they say that they only will do that if reporters on one side of a confrontation cannot provide an overview. This is a very weird sentence. If reporters on one side of a confrontation cannot provide an overview, we ensure the audience receives a broader context. No, you don't. There's no evidence that you do. I just showed the Freedom Convoy was reported by reporters who took one side of the entire movement. There's no evidence at all on the CBC's website that they provided a broader context in the course of their coverage. Our journalistic independence, sorry, I just bit my lip. Our journalistic independence and credibility, this stuff gets me so passionate. Our journalistic independence and credibility is paramount, so our reporting should avoid inflaming or aiding in any way the various sides in a confrontation. Haha. The way they phrase this is very, very weird. I'm just going to say it. It's weird. Like, look at that sentence. It says, our journalistic independence and credibility is paramount. So our reporting should avoid inflaming or aiding in any way the various sides in a confrontation. Okay, that's interesting. Our reporting should, not must, it should avoid inflaming or aiding in any way the various sides in a confrontation. Don't get it twisted at all. These media execs go through their journalistic standards and practices with a fine-tooth comb, looking specifically at the verbs, the adjectives, the nouns that they use throughout their pieces that they put forward. This sentence right here can completely change the tone if this one word should was redone, was replaced with must. Our reporting must avoid inflaming or aiding in any way the various sides in a confrontation. Not should, it must. It absolutely must avoid inflaming. That, to me, is what a public broadcaster must do. It should avoid inflaming. It must avoid inflaming and aiding in any way the various sides in a confrontation. This is absolute madness. We consider the public interest before offering live. This includes taking into account the possibility of showing scenes of extreme violence. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so now, guys, I'm getting all riled up, and I haven't even read the other sections. Individuals or small groups sometimes act in ways that cause disruptions and are potentially dangerous. Let's see what we got here. Before providing hunger strikes, this is interesting. We take into account that the presence of a camera or microphone can alter the behavior of participants. If you're just joining me, sorry everybody, if you're just joining me, I am going through the journalistic standards of the... I'm going through the journalistic standards and practices of the CBC. This is what I'm doing on a Thursday night at 9 o'clock and calling out Catherine Tate. Catherine Tate, CEO of the CBC. I'm calling you out. You got... This is hilarious. Oh, what am I doing? Okay. If CBC staff have exclusive access to a sit-in or demonstration, a decision should be referred to by the managing editor. Okay, I don't... All of this is just such horseshit. It's not to be believed. So going back to what Catherine Tate said, Catherine Tate is the CEO of the CBC, who openly said that their government, I'm so used to saying that about the CBC. Catherine Tate said that the CBC is free of government interference. And if anybody has questions, to consult the journalistic standards and practices that are on their website. I have gone through the section on civil disturbances in relation to the Freedom Convoy, because if you go on the CBC's website, there's not one single article, maybe there's one, there's not two articles there are dozens of articles they've put forward on the Freedom Convoy that attempts to understand why Canadians decided to be part of that protest. Not one, maybe one. Not two, okay? There's not two articles about trying to understand why Canadians went down and protested in February in the dead of winter to protest the government. She said, we're free of government interference and we're independent and da-da-da. The government, the Liberal government under Trudeau, supported by Jagmeet Singh, sought to discredit those protesters from day one. Trudeau openly said that they were this fringe minority of people. They blocked all of Ottawa. They weren't being heard. If you go through the CBC's journalistic standards and practices on civil disturbances, it uses such wishy-washy language that it's hard to actually know what exactly is meant. For example, this right here is the most ridiculous sentence. And maybe I write a letter to Catherine Tait and let Catherine know I believe it's a ridiculous sentence. Our reporting should avoid inflaming or aiding in any way the various sides in a confrontation. No, your reporting must, M-U-S-T, must avoid inflaming or aiding in any way the various sides in a confrontation. Not should. There's no should here. Must. Absolute must. I can't believe that Catherine Tait could say that this is free of government influence and independent. This is such a miss, and it makes me so, not sick, but it just makes me so upset at the way in which these government entities say they're independent, and they're not. They are not. If you go to politics, it's election coverage, online surveys, etc. No. I am more concerned about the framing of your issues, the framing of your news articles, the framing of your videos, the political bias that's built in to your hiring practices and who you hire. I can't think, and this is me ranting now and not reporting, but I can't think of a CBC journalist who is not only middle of the road, I would say who isn't. I can't think of a CBC journalist who's right-leaning, period. Let's just call it what it is. If you want to be free of government influence, then you'd have journalists and people in your newsroom of varying ideas and backgrounds, diversity of perspective. When I tune into the CBC, I know what I'm getting. I know it's a packaged product that's not going to be nearly as critical of the government as it should be. And the Freedom Convoy is just one of many, many examples. There's just so many examples. The amount of criticism towards Trudeau. You know how many protests there have been against Trudeau, and consistently either it's not covered, or people who, or if it is covered, it's not discussed more broadly.